Yeah.
All right. So Travis is our guest speaker today. He's going to be covering a few things about HR. Surprise, surprise. And then we're going to be doing a Q&A at the end. Travis, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah. So I am representing the I'm the call director.
Hold on one second, Travis.
Yep.
Okay. Sorry, you were cutting in and out a little bit.
Oh, that's fine. So yeah, I'm with the Southeast Idaho chapter of SHRM, and I'm the college relations director. So I get to work with you guys and do our best to help you get involved and have a connection with SHRM, and stay involved. So are any of you connected with any kind of SHRM right now?
I don't think any of us have joined quite yet. Victoria, raise your hand. She came with us. Allie up here in the front row that you can't see. Megan and myself went to the lunch and learn.
Cool.
We all went to the lunch and learn last week.
Yeah. Oh, good. So, for those of you who don't know, SHRM is Society for Human Resource Management, and we have a chapter in Southeast Idaho. And it's great for students, especially in this field. It's good to be able to network, get to know people in the field. Gives you a head start on getting the experience that you're looking for, getting the contact that you're looking for. So I'm a BYU-Idaho graduate myself. I'm also an online instructor. I teach HR, and it's just a lot of fun. So thanks for having me meet virtually tonight.
All right, awesome. Let's give Travis a hand for taking time tonight. All right, so there was a few things we asked Travis to talk about. I have the list. Sorry, I'm really frazzled, guys. I was telling people we found a cat in our car engine over the weekend, and it threw like a wrench in our plans, and I've just been like super frazzled since then. Well, it has a new home. Couldn't keep it. Okay. So the first thing we asked Travis to talk about, just kind of some unexpected challenges that you faced when you first got started in HR that you could give us a heads up about so we can prepare.
Challenges. Yeah, that's a great question, and I think there's a couple things that come to mind. I think probably the biggest one is just the balance between, and really it's a leadership skill, the balance between when to step in and when to stay back. What I mean by that is, when to stay back and have a listening ear and be that advocate and be the people person, versus being a partner of the business, being direct, being able to talk business and be firm. You get to wear both hats. It really is a leadership position where you're partnering with business leaders. You're also partnering and advocating with employees. But at the end of the day, you're trying to do the right thing for the company or organization that you're representing. So just being able to navigate that was, I guess, that's kind of the ongoing challenge, and that's something that comes along with time. The other thing is just really keeping track of all that you're involved in. There's a lot of multitasking. I put that in quotes because multitasking is a myth, but you need to be able to transition between various tasks and be sure you have good follow-up skills. I definitely look at my role in HR as a customer service type role, mostly because that's my background, but being able to follow up and show those follow-up skills to increase your trust in the organization and remain a partner. So,
real quick, Travis, what exactly is your title right now with the company that you work for?
Oh, okay. Sorry, I should have introduced that part of myself.
You're totally fine.
I'm the senior HR business partner at Curtiss-Wright in Idaho Falls. So we have, overall, I have about 400 employees that I support in a few different states. We have about 125 of those in Idaho Falls. So I'm the HR point of contact on site and try to keep everybody happy.
So what exactly does your company do?
So Curtiss-Wright specifically, we engineer, overall, company-wide, we engineer products, specialty type products. In Idaho Falls, we're part of the nuclear division. And so we have half of our group manufactures electronic components and modules that we put into the nuclear power plants. And then the other half engineers the software and control systems that we put into the nuclear power plants to monitor their efficiencies, make sure they're flowing correctly, operating correctly. And pretty interesting stuff. If we can monitor these plants, we can monitor the flow in a pipe, for example, if it's running too hot or if it's got a leak. If we can identify that, we can save a plant, millions of dollars in 1 year. So that's kind of what we do. So I support mostly engineers.
Awesome. So back to what you were saying about multitasking. With us here on campus, we have the one class that's offered. We have a few applicable courses like organizational effectiveness and organizational communication, and then we have the conflict 50 conflict management class. So other than those classes, what are some things that you think we could do to prepare for something like that? Because like you said, with HR, you kind of have to do a little bit of everything. So how can we prepare ourselves now to gain that skill?
Well, I would recommend getting involved in hands-on work wherever you can. So internships are awesome for that. So if you're more on the tail end of your schoolwork, do a couple of internships. That really gets you the exposure. If you have a job now, shadow with the managers, learn what their challenges are. Some of the things that they're running into with their difficult employees or tough interactions that they have to have. And talk to people as much as you can. The classes you mentioned are good. I also recommend, studying on your own as much as you can in your free time. I know that's premium for you guys, but read books, look at webinars, learn about HR, learn about leadership, think about how you feel about leadership and how you would coach a manager through a challenging situation, so you can be a resource.
Awesome. All right, so the next thing we wanted to ask you was kind of, what does your day look like a day-to-day in the life of Travis Stanley at work?
Yeah, it's a lot of interaction with managers. So I'll get in the morning and I've got, as work kind of goes these days, an inbox full of email and then a list of ongoing tasks. Right now, for example, I've got different things going on. We've got open enrollment around the corner for our benefits for 2019. We've got compensation review. So I had an audit spreadsheet that I was reviewing to make sure we had everybody in the groups categorized properly for compensation review for the raises that will go out this year. And we had activities on site. We had flu shots come on board last week, and we're interviewing like crazy. So managing a calendar is a big deal. Managing your tasks amid the appointments that you have. And then you'll have people stop in on you. So I had a manager stop in today who was having some challenges with his boss, and he was trying to figure out ways to offer feedback to his boss. Sometimes a challenging thing to do, intimidating to say, hey, I have some feedback for you, boss. So stuff can jump in on you. You might have a plan, and sometimes it gets derailed. A lot of computer work. Me and one of the admins are working on org charts right now, trying to get those up to date. And then working with staffing agencies, looking for temporary hire help that we need. So lots going on in a day. So really, managing your time well and really keeping track of the tasks that you have. Sometimes you get an email and get a request, and you have to figure out ways that work for you to follow through on that and make sure that gets done.
Awesome. So I had a question come to mind. What would you say, not unexpected challenges, but what would you say the biggest challenge you have faced as in your current job?
I think, and a lot of HR folks would tell you this, it is a challenge to get ahead of the need for proper coaching and development to help managers do that, but do that in a way that is documented. That we hear it, the documentation of how we're treating our employees and what we're working with them on, especially when they're having challenges, is so important. So getting the buy-in and getting the training with the management teams to support that is a challenge. Where the most common trend I've seen is a frustrated manager will come into your office and they say, so-and-so I've had it, I'm ready to fire him. What do we need to do to get rid of him right now? And my question is, okay, when's the last time you talked to this person? Have we written them up? Have you coached them? What do you have written down? And many times it's nothing, if barely anything at all. So that's been a challenge, is to kind of figure out how to administer that and show the importance of that. You have managers that get it and some that don't. And so in the case that there's not really a record or a history of coaching and accountability that's happened, you get to hold back the reins and start the process new, depending on the situation. So ask me questions if that is unclear.
So you got your master's at Utah State, their MHR program, right? Did you do yours on campus or did you do it online?
It was broadcast. Actually, one of the teachers up in Sugar City broadcasted up at the high school there. So that's how I did that. It was the executive program. So it was Friday nights and Saturday mornings for 2 years.
So what were some things going into your master's program? How am I trying to phrase this question, Megan? Read my mind.
You tell me.
Going into your master's, what would you say was your deciding factor to get one?
Yeah, good question. You don't always want to jump into a master's degree right away. It has to be the right situation, and it has to be the right degree. This program through Utah State didn't require the work experience. I had some internships, and I had just a year or two of HR work underneath me. Other schools require 2 or 3 years. So, the first thing is find out what the requirements are, and then find out what your goals are. A big part of it was a personal choice, where I knew I didn't want to lose momentum. So I finished at BYU-Idaho, had about 6 months. I was working full time and wanted to keep going, and so I got through into this program. But it really has to be what your goals are. If you don't have a lot of experience behind you and you're not really sure what you want to do, don't rush into a graduate degree. But I definitely knew I wanted to get into HR, and this was the path I chose to kind of get some of those credentials underneath me to get a start. So, to narrow that down, look at the program, figure out, make sure it's what you want to do, what path you want to take, and make sure it diversifies you enough. I had a business degree at BYU-Idaho, and then I got the MSHR. So I felt like it gave me a good mix of that business partnership plus the HR background. And there's a lot of benefits now, even at the Utah State program. It's a lot of it's more of a hybrid program now, where you can do it on a lot of it online, and you can get done in less than 2 years. Also consider the cost. If you have a plan to pay that back, or maybe you have an employer that has tuition reimbursement, different things like that. In my personal case, I feel like it helped me springboard into my first job and where I'm at now. So definitely it was a benefit to me. Just has to be at the right time for you and your family.
Awesome. One last question before we get into the Q&A for about 10 minutes. Do you have any experience working with unions?
I don't. In fact, my last company had us do annual union awareness training. How to
Is that a fancy way of saying anti-union?
Yes. So we would do training on the indicators of possible union activity, what to look for, what to avoid. There's things that employees can legally talk about. And so those, even if it, so either direction, if it was a union environment or not, it's good to know those rules. For example, an employee or employees can talk together about their wages. That's actually legally protected. So even though it might drive us crazy, employees are legally protected to talk about their wages, what they're making. The other part of that is social media, for example. Knowing what union protected activity is. If employees are talking on Facebook, for example, about work, that's legally protected activity. And it gets interesting. We know companies have social media policies where they can't act as an agent of the company. They shouldn't disparage the company. But the very act of talking about work together or online is protected. So some good guidance you can find on that is going out to it's called the NLRB, National Labor Relations Board, and looking at their guidance of the do's and don'ts, or what employees' rights are in the workplace. That way you can.
Can you give me that name one more time?
NLRB, it's the National Labor Relations Board. Pretty interesting stuff. I actually wrote a paper at Utah State about the social media side of that. So being aware as an HR person of what is protected, because sometimes you'll have a manager say, hey, they're talking about their pay. This needs to be confidential, when in reality, that's actually a protected thing.
Awesome. All right, so for the next about 10 minutes, we'll open it up to question and answer. Who has a question? All right, your hand is up first.
So you were talking about wages. I guess I'm just wondering, because I've seen a lot of opportunities to get a master's in human resources, and I don't think I can afford that, and I don't know if I'm going to go that far. If someone were to graduate with their bachelor's in like communications or psychology or something related to the human resources field, where do you see that landing them in the business or in the organization? And does that keep you from being able to progress to a certain point? For example, through experience, would that be able to make up for what they didn't learn that you did through your studies? Or would they be halted at a certain point and not able to go further until they got their master's?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wouldn't say you're held back because you don't have that master's degree. Really what at least for the master's degree in HR, it helps you look at things strategically. So, if you're later down the road going to get into HR and do the actual planning of an organization, laying it all out, it really gives you that strategic advantage, that strategic viewpoint. But if you were to get a bachelor's degree and kind of move up into the company, you can build a great career in HR. I think the challenge right now is just getting that starting point. How do I get a start in HR when all the job requests say, hey, you need 3 years of experience? So whether that be like, an office administrative type work in an HR department, or being a manager, supervisor, where you're going to be involved in some hiring and stuff like that. You can get the experience, and eventually those opportunities will open up. But I have a number of people in the field that they've kind of worked their way up with the bachelor's degree, and then later on they might get their master's, or of course you can go and get your HR certifications too, and that's a great route to go too.
I had a different question, but I would love to know more about HR certifications. What does that entail? How long does that take? What does that look like?
Yeah, good question. I'm not an expert there because I'm working on that. That's the next step for me, is to get the certifications. And so there's a couple different institutions that certify. So SHRM itself has a certification, HR certification or senior HR certification. And then there's another institution called the HRCI, HR Certification Institute. So when you see an HR person and it says PHR by their name or SPHR, that means they've got their certification. So similar to like a CPA, they have their certified public accountant. That means they've studied, taken some exams, and shown proficiency in their field. It's similar with this. You study, you take some exams, and you get approved. So
that lunch and learn that we went to this month, you guys gave out some codes. Do those apply towards those certifications?
They do. So the codes, once you're certified, there's requirements, continuing education requirements, certain amount of points that you need to carry ongoing to keep your certification effective, fresh. So,
all right.
So attending the meetings, the conferences, there's a lot of online webinars and things where you'll see that there's credits available, and that's how you keep that going.
All right, Megan.
Real quick, we get back to your question too. Like, if we went to that lunch and learn, like, are those codes going to do us like any good if we're not members of the society yet? I'm sure yet.
You'll get the value of the material and the training. The codes won't help you until you've actually got your certification.
Okay.
How much do those certifications cost?
In the research I've done, and again, I'm not expert in it, but I think it's the exam. I think there's a couple exams, just a few $100s.
Okay.
So a lot of times, if you have an employer that is willing to cover that, that's something that's pretty reasonable. But there's some time involved. You got to study and prepare for it as well. I don't think it's just something you go and take. So I went the route of master's degree, and now I'm looking into the certification side of things. So but I think last I saw it was like $400.
That's not bad.
And that was for the battery of tests and things like that.
That sounds
good. Research. Good questions. I've actually just been looking into this myself.
We'll go Noah, and then back to you.
I was gonna ask. So you're talking about how you got a bachelor's in business here at BYU-Idaho, and it's only my third semester, and I'm doing the communications advocacy route right now, which I have a communicational, organizational management and conflict management are things that we have to have as classes. And I don't want to bring doom and gloom to the class, but how realistic is it for since they don't have a degree here for HR, how realistic is it for me or anybody else in this room to be able to graduate and be able to kind of have a chance in the HR community? Because right now I've wanted to do it for a long time. My mom was in human resources for a long time, and it's just kind of all just it's hard to think about sometimes because you don't know if you have a chance because you don't have a degree that says Bachelor's of Science of Human Resource Management, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, good question, valid concern. There's value in your education, because it trains you how to think, and sometimes we get stuck in that linear plan. We need to, point A, point B, but really, and this was feedback I was given when I was in your boat, just a few years ago. Kind of look for the industries that you're interested in, get into an industry that you might have experience in or you're just interested in, and then you can find opportunities there. And that's, that might be starting out in a supervisor role, or some kind of legal support role, or something that could link into HR, because you can spin that experience into where you want to go. And as you work and as you network, tell people what you're wanting to accomplish and what experience you're wanting to get. You can kind of pave that path. In my case, it worked with a couple internships to get me some experience to get started. So, don't feel limited by the name of your degree, but really just focus on your goals and get the right connections to help you get there. And that's why getting involved with things like SHRM, and coming to the events, and getting involved with the networking and meeting people can really benefit you.
The president of this chapter, Thomas, he used to be one of the head HR people at Melaleuca, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He just got like a promotion or something like that, right? So he's not in HR.
He did, yeah. He went. They've got a. He's in a coaching role, a leadership and a coaching role with the business builders of the company, and so he's using a lot of his skills. It's more on the sales side, but yeah, he's been on the training side of HR for a long time.
Awesome. All right, what was your second question?
I have two more. Perhaps I missed this. You said certification is typically like $400. How long does that take? Is that like a certificate worth like around 15 credits? Like how much time typically does it take to get certification?
I know there's an exam, so it's just the time for studying. I know people will study for that for quite a while, and they have a couple different times a year when you can take the exam. So within a year you can study and take the exam, just depending on how you time that out.
So it's not like a concurrent, like you have a quiz every 2 weeks type of thing.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was
No, I think it's an exam that you prep in for.
So almost like taking like a grad school entrance exam, you can only take it.
Like an SAT or something.
Yeah, like the SAT. Yeah.
It is. Yeah, and again, I don't know all the ins and outs, but I will be getting into that more and more, so I'll keep sharing with you guys.
And then I did have a couple.
Yeah, but you're good.
Out of the way. So I actually have a friend who is very successful in her business, right? She's in charge of all the Walmarts in Mexico. And she was telling me basically not to go into HR because she says there's no money. And I was like, but that's what I think I would like to do. And she's like, well, you might end up getting stuck, or like you might want to move into more of the business part instead of administration. But I mean, what do you think is the outlook more or less for someone who is, a recent college grad? How far do you think someone could go successfully to make the kind of money that they're looking for without having to switch over to more of the businessy side of the organizations that they're working for?
Yeah, good question. I don't know. I think that's a myth that we need to bust. You can definitely make money in HR.
I think the starting salary for an HR generalist in Utah right now is like 47 to 55.
Okay.
That's recent college entry level in Utah. So it's
like the national.
That's like the national average for entry level.
Yeah, it's pretty average. That's pretty average, and that's where you get into different industries. And then you move up into a career, and you can make good money. I know. So my boss, for example, she's our senior manager over 2 different divisions of our company, and she does well. She's been with the company for 17 years, and she makes good money. And I've been able to provide for my family and have us be comfortable, and that, again, it depends on your aspirations. So I don't have the aspiration to go and be a CEO, but I do want to move up in HR, and you can advance in the career in HR. And a lot of people, they'll advance, and some of them go off and start their own consulting businesses and do things on the side. So really, whatever you want to accomplish, you can do it. And there is money out there.
I also think that there's not just one aspect of HR. I mean, there are I mean, there are dozens of different types of little niches that you can find within human resources.
That is true. That is true. You know, there's some folks that, you know, go specifically into training. They go specifically into benefits. There's workers' compensation. There's the generalists and partnership roles. There are companies that have, left me. CHRO, Chief Human Resource Officers. So there are companies now where HR is becoming part of the C-suite. That's what you want to do.
All right, do we have any more questions?
Sorry.
Well, yeah, one more and then we'll go these
Okay,
two.
this is my last one. You mentioned administrative work and how a lot of people start off there and kind of move their way around. I'm applying for a position in Utah for an administrative job that I have a friend recommending me for. So I'm really hoping to be able to start off there. What are some recommendations that you would advise for someone going into an interview to sell themselves on their abilities to do the administrative work? I mean, from my understanding, I don't know that much about administrative work. It's mostly like working with the data, working with Excel. So I guess I believe that I could do it well, but I don't understand everything about the position, and there's only so much I can understand without actually getting in and talking to them in person. And I want to be able to show them what I can offer without having to be watching people in work doing it, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and my first item for that is actually go with those questions. You want to ask those questions and find out what the work is, and then that way you know what you can tie your experiences to. So that seems backwards. I know that seems backwards, but it's important in an interview to go prepared to answer questions. But if you have a set of good, solid questions that you ask, that shows you're engaged and interested in the position, and they're going to see how you're thinking and what you're looking at. And so that actually goes a long way to just have those questions set up and with you. In fact, my little sister has an interview tomorrow, and she says, "Can I bring a notebook with questions?" And I said, "Heavens, yes, you should." have questions with you. And beyond that, you know, administrative work, really what you want to do in an interview is think about the experiences that you've had, either in school or in work experience, how you've added value to a project, what kind of skills you have, what your strength areas are, and then be able to share examples. You know, I don't know your work experience specifically, but the more you have those solid examples of what you've accomplished and how you've added value in your work and in your projects, being able to clearly articulate what you've done in a school project, for example, is great. The reason I say that is we interview a lot of interns, and sometimes it is like pulling teeth to get them to tell us, "Hey, you have this project on your resume. What did you do?" And they can't articulate it. So on the side, those that can really say, "Yeah, this is what the problem was. This is what we accomplished. This is how many hours it took, and this is the things that we discovered, and this is how it turned out." Just really going in confidently and knowing your own experience go a long way.
All right, I think we got time for one more question.
Yeah, and maybe this is an unfair question, but what do you think is the viewpoint of the other leaders in the company of your position, of your segment, right? Like, how do they view HR in your company? And like I said, it may be a little unfair, but what do you think?
No, that's reality. One of your challenges in HR is to get the partnership of your leaders with you. So in Idaho Falls, I've got two of our segment directors. They're good to work with. The one values HR input a lot more than the other. So you really have to, because on the one that isn't as involved, HR is just a roadblock. HR is just the process and red tape to getting in the way of what he wants to do. Whereas the other guy who supports it, we're a partner. He understands the value of culture, making the right decisions, and presenting ourselves the right way, communicating properly, and being consistent. So you do have to fight for that partnership. You have to excel your role the best you can, and stick to your, what's the phrase? Stick to your guns sometimes, but also have a listening ear. So, yep, it's out there. You know, for many, HR is the anti-fun person, and for others, the HR is a business partner.
Awesome. All right, let's give Travis a big round of applause. We just want to thank you one more time, Travis, for taking time out of your evening.
Sure.
We'll talk to you later.
Okay. Thank you all. If you have other questions, I'm happy to come again or shoot me an email.
Would you care if I put your LinkedIn info up on the whiteboard?
No, that'd be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You bet. Thank you. Have a good evening.
I can't see this.